Beneath the shimmering moonlight, the river Ganges flows like liquid silver, its surface alive with the flicker of countless oil lamps. Millions gather along its banks even today, their prayers and offerings echoing a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. But why? What is it about rivers and lakes that made ancient cultures see them not just as sources of water, but as sacred gateways to the divine? From the life-giving floods of the Nile to the mysterious cenotes of the Maya, these bodies of water were more than just geographical features. They were the lifeblood of civilizations, the keepers of myths, and the bridges between the earthly and the eternal. In this video, we'll journey across continents and through time to uncover the profound bond between humanity and waterways, exploring how survival, spirituality, and storytelling intertwine to create some of the most enduring mysteries of our past. Along the way, we'll discover why these ancient beliefs might hold the key to understanding our relationship with water in today's climate-conscious world. And it all begins with a single question: how did rivers and lakes become gods? In the ancient Babylonian epic, the Enuma Elish, the world begins not with light or land, but with water. The primordial goddess Tiamat, a vast and chaotic sea, is split in two by the god Marduk, her body transformed into the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This act of creation wasn't just a story, it was a way of explaining the very essence of life. Water, in its raw, untamed form, represented chaos, but through divine intervention, it became the foundation of order, fertility, and civilization. This idea wasn't unique to Babylon. Across the globe, cultures saw water as the starting point of existence, a force both destructive and life-giving. Take the Maori of New Zealand, for example. They believed lakes were formed from the tears of Rangi, the sky god, as he wept for his separated lover, Papa, the earth goddess. These tears weren't just symbols of sorrow, they were sacred, connecting the heavens and the earth. Similarly, the Yanomami people of the Amazon saw rivers as the lifeblood of the world tree, flowing from its roots to nourish the land. Even the ancient Greeks in Hesiod's Theogony described Oceanus as the Earth's circulatory system, a vast encircling river that sustained all life. Water wasn't just a physical necessity, it was a spiritual one. Rivers and lakes were often personified as deities, worshipped and revered. The Nile, for instance, wasn't just a river to the ancient Egyptians, it was the embodiment of Osiris, the god of resurrection. Its annual flood, which brought fertile soil to the fields, was seen as a divine act, a reminder of Osiris's power to bring life from death. Springs, too, held sacred significance, often serving as sites for cosmogonic rituals. These places weren't just sources of water, they were portals to the divine, where the boundary between the earthly and the eternal blurred. But what if geography shaped theology? What if the way ancient people experienced their environment, its rivers, lakes, and floods directly influenced how they understood the cosmos? The Nile's predictable flooding, the Amazon's endless flow, the Tigris and Euphrates' life-giving waters, these weren't just features of the landscape. They were the raw materials of myth, the inspiration for stories that explained the world and humanity's place within it. And these myths didn't stay confined to the realm of storytelling. They translated into daily worship, shaping rituals, festivals, and even the layout of cities. Water wasn't just something to drink or irrigate crops with, it was a sacred force, a reminder of the divine order that held the universe together. From the banks of the Ganges to the shores of Lake Titicaca, ancient cultures built their lives around this reverence, creating a legacy that still echoes today. Imagine standing on the banks of the Ganges at dawn, the air thick with the scent of incense and the hum of chants. Pilgrims wade into the river, their hands cupping its waters, believing that a single dip can dissolve lifetimes of karma. This isn't just a ritual, it's an act of transformation, a crossing from the mundane to the sacred. The Ganges, or Ganga as it's reverently called, is one of Hinduism's most sacred tirthas, a word that means crossing point or ford. These tirthas aren't just physical locations, they're spiritual thresholds, places where the divine touches the earthly. But this idea of water as a sacred crossing point isn't unique to India. Halfway across the world, Aztec priests would dive into the depths of Lake Texcoco, their bodies plunging into the cold, dark waters to commune with Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. For them, the lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a portal to the divine, a place where the boundaries between the human and the holy dissolved. In Zoroastrian tradition, Lake Haman in modern-day Iran held a similar significance. Known as Kasayaya, it was believed to be the place where the savior Saoshyant would one day emerge to renew the world. The lake wasn't just a source of water, it was a symbol of hope, a sacred space where the cosmic and the earthly intertwined. Mircea Eliade, the renowned historian of religion, called these places Axis Mundi, centers of the world where the sacred breaks through into the profane. Whether it was the Ganges, Lake Texcoco, or Lake Haman, these bodies of water were more than just geographical features. They were living temples, spaces where the divine could be touched, tasted, and felt. Ritual purity played a central role in these practices. In Hinduism, bathing in the Ganges wasn't just about physical cleanliness, it was about spiritual renewal. Similarly, the Celts would throw coins and other offerings into sacred springs, believing that these gifts would appease the spirits of the water and ensure their favor. These acts weren't just symbolic, they were deeply practical, rooted in the belief that water could cleanse not just the body but the soul. One of the most fascinating examples of water's sacred role comes from ancient Greece. At the Oracle of Delphi, the priestess Pythia would sit above a sacred spring, inhaling ethylene fumes that rose from the water. These fumes, believed to be the breath of the god Apollo, would send her into a trance, allowing her to deliver prophecies. Here, water wasn't just a medium for the divine, it was a conduit, a literal bridge between the human and the holy. But was water's sacredness purely spiritual, or did it also serve a practical purpose? For ancient cultures, the line between the two was often blurred. Water was essential for survival, but it was also unpredictable. Floods could destroy, droughts could devastate. By turning water into a sacred force, these cultures found a way to make sense of its power, to negotiate with it, and to ensure its favor. In the end, these rituals and pilgrimage sites weren't just about worship, they were about connection. Connection to the divine, to the natural world, and to each other. And as we'll see next, this connection wasn't just spiritual, it was also deeply tied to the practical needs of survival, shaping the very foundations of ancient societies. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers, often called the cradles of civilization, didn't just sustain the ancient Mesopotamians, they shaped their entire worldview. These rivers were more than water sources, they were the lifeblood of empires, their seasonal floods bringing both abundance and chaos. When the waters rose, they deposited rich silt across the plains, creating fertile fields that fed cities like Babylon and Ur. But when the floods failed, famine followed, and the people saw this as a sign of divine displeasure. The rivers weren't just physical forces, they were cosmic ones, their rhythms dictating the rise and fall of kingdoms. Halfway across the world, the Inca Empire of Southeast Asia took a different approach to sacred hydrology. Their massive Barays, or reservoirs, weren't just feats of engineering, they were mirrors of Hindu cosmology. These vast, rectangular bodies of water symbolized the cosmic ocean, reflecting the belief that the universe itself emerged from primordial waters. The Barays weren't just practical solutions to water management, they were spiritual tools designed to align the earthly realm with the divine. Pliny the Elder once described the Nile as the gift of black soil, a phrase that captures the river's dual role as both sustainer and sacred force. To the ancient Egyptians, the Nile's annual flood was a divine event, a reminder of Osiris's power to bring life from death. The floodwaters carried not just fertile soil, but also a sense of cosmic order, their predictability offering a rhythm to life that felt almost sacred. Drought, on the other hand, was seen as a rupture in that order, a sign that the gods were displeased. For the Maya, water was both a blessing and a curse. Their sacred cenotes, natural sinkholes filled with groundwater, were lifelines in a land prone to drought. But these cenotes weren't just sources of water, they were portals to the underworld, places where the living could communicate with the dead. Offerings, including precious objects and even human sacrifices, were thrown into their depths, a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in controlling water. The Inca, too, understood the sacred nature of water. Their intricate irrigation systems were synchronized with Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun god Inti. This wasn't just a practical measure, it was a spiritual one, ensuring that the flow of water mirrored the rhythms of the cosmos. For the Inca, controlling water wasn't just about survival, it was about maintaining harmony with the divine. So, did control over water mean power over life and the gods? In many ways, yes. Water was the ultimate source of life, but it was also unpredictable, a force that could both create and destroy. By turning water into a sacred force, ancient cultures found a way to negotiate with its power, to ensure its favor, and to align themselves with the divine order of the universe. And nowhere was this more evident than in ancient Egypt, where the Nile wasn't just a river, it was a god. Its waters were the lifeblood of the kingdom, its floods a divine gift, and its droughts a cosmic warning. The Egyptians didn't just worship the Nile, they lived by its rhythms, their entire civilization built around its sacred flow. But what happens when a civilization's survival depends on a force it can't fully control? That's a question we'll explore next as we dive deeper into the mysteries of sacred water and its role in shaping human history. In the heart of ancient Egypt, the Nile wasn't just a river, it was a god. Pharaoh Akhenaten, known for his radical religious reforms, once composed a hymn to the Nile, calling it the bringer of food rich in provisions. This wasn't mere poetry, it was a recognition of the river's divine role in sustaining life. Every year, the Nile's inundation brought not just water, but fertile black silt that transformed barren land into lush fields. This annual miracle was attributed to Hapi, the androgynous god of the Nile, who embodied the river's life-giving power. Hapi wasn't just a deity, Hapi was the heartbeat of Egypt, a force that dictated the rhythm of life itself. To predict the success of each harvest, Egyptian priests relied on the Nilometer, a device used to measure the river's flood levels. These measurements weren't just practical, they were sacred. A high flood meant abundance, a sign of Hapi's favor. A low flood, however, spelled disaster, a warning that the gods were displeased. The Nile's ebb and flow became a cosmic barometer, its waters a direct line to the divine. The river's sacred symbolism extended even further through the story of Osiris, the god of resurrection. According to myth, Osiris was drowned in the Nile, his body dismembered and scattered across Egypt. Yet, through the magic of his wife Isis, he was reborn, becoming a symbol of eternal life. The Nile's annual flood mirrored this cycle of death and rebirth, its waters bringing life to the land just as Osiris's resurrection brought hope to the people. Even Cleopatra, Egypt's last pharaoh, understood the Nile's divine significance. She staged elaborate processions on the river, her golden barge gliding through its waters as a symbol of her connection to the gods. The Rosetta Stone, one of history's most famous artifacts, records how Ptolemy V restored temples along the Nile, ensuring the river's favor and the kingdom's prosperity. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, famously declared, "Egypt is the Nile's gift," a statement that captures the river's dual role as both sustainer and sacred force. But the Nile wasn't the only river worshipped as a god. Halfway across the world, in India, the Ganges flows as a living goddess, her waters believed to cleanse the soul and dissolve lifetimes of sin. Like the Nile, the Ganges is more than a river. She is a divine presence, a force that connects the earthly and the eternal. Pilgrims flock to her banks, their prayers and offerings echoing a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. What is it about rivers that makes them so sacred? Is it their life-giving power, their unpredictable nature, or their ability to connect the physical and the spiritual? Perhaps it's all of these things woven together into a tapestry of myth, ritual, and survival. From the Nile to the Ganges, rivers have shaped not just landscapes, but the very fabric of human belief. And as we'll see next, this sacred connection to water isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living tradition, one that continues to shape cultures around the world today. The Ganges, or Ganga Ma Mother Ganges, is more than a river to the people of India. She is a living goddess, a source of life, and a purifying force. Every 12 years, millions gather for the Kumbh Mela, the largest religious gathering on earth, where over 50 million pilgrims bathe in her waters on a single day. This isn't just a ritual, it's an act of devotion, a belief that her waters can wash away lifetimes of sin and grant liberation from the cycle of rebirth. The Kumbh Mela is a spectacle of faith, a testament to the enduring power of Ganga Ma in the hearts of her devotees. But how did the Ganges become so sacred? The answer lies in the ancient epic, the Ramayana. According to legend, the river was once a celestial stream flowing through the heavens. When the sage Bhagiratha prayed for her descent to earth to purify the ashes of his ancestors, Ganga agreed. But her force was so immense that it threatened to flood the world. To save the earth, the god Shiva caught her in his matted hair, releasing her in gentle streams. This act transformed the Ganges into a sacred river, her waters imbued with Shiva's divine energy. Diana Eck, in her book India, A Sacred Geography, describes the Ganges as a tirtha, a crossing point between the earthly and the divine. Her waters are believed to heal both physically and spiritually, a belief rooted in centuries of tradition. Yet there's a paradox at play here. Despite her sacred status, the Ganges is also one of the most polluted rivers in the world. Industrial waste, sewage, and ritual offerings have turned her waters into a toxic mix, raising questions about the balance between reverence and responsibility. But nature has a way of surprising us. Scientists have discovered that the Ganges contains bacteriophagous viruses that kill harmful bacteria. These microscopic defenders make her waters uniquely resistant to contamination, a phenomenon that some see as a divine intervention. Could this be evidence of Ganga Ma's purifying power, even in the face of modern pollution? Or is it a reminder that science and faith can coexist, offering different lenses through which to understand the sacred? The Ganges journey begins in the icy glaciers of the Himalayas at a place called Gomuch, the cow's mouth. This glacial source, known as the Bhagirathi, is considered the abode of Shiva, further linking the river to the divine. From there, she flows through the plains, nourishing the land and the people, her waters carrying both life and legend. Yet, the Ganges is not alone in her sacredness. Across the globe, rivers and lakes have been revered as embodiments of the divine. In the Americas, the Aztecs worshipped Chalchutlicue, the goddess of lakes and streams, while the Inca venerated Mama Cocha, the mother of the waters. These aquatic spirits, like Ganga Ma, remind us of water's dual role as both sustainer and sacred force. So, what does the Ganges teach us about the relationship between humanity and the natural world? Perhaps it's that water is more than a resource, it's a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, a force that connects us to something greater than ourselves. And as we'll see next, this connection isn't just a relic of the past. It's a living tradition, one that continues to shape cultures around the world today. Deep in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula lies the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza, a gaping sinkhole that plunges into darkness. To the ancient Maya, this was no ordinary well. It was a gateway to Xibalba, the underworld, a place where the living could communicate with the dead. The cenote's still waters were believed to be the domain of Chok, the rain god, who demanded offerings of gold, jade, and even human lives. Archaeologists diving into its depths have uncovered treasures and tragedies, ceremonial daggers, precious artifacts, and the bones of sacrificial victims, their stories preserved in the cold, silent depths. The Maya saw cenotes as more than just water sources. They called them Dizanot, meaning mouths of the rainbow serpent, a mythical creature that bridged the heavens and the underworld. These natural wells were portals, places where the boundaries between worlds blurred. Offerings thrown into their depths weren't just gifts to the gods. They were acts of negotiation, attempts to ensure rain, fertility, and survival in a land where water was both scarce and sacred. Halfway across the world, high in the Andes, Lake Titicaca holds a very different kind of sacred significance. According to Inca mythology, this vast, shimmering lake was the birthplace of the sun itself. The god Viracocha rose from its depths, commanding his children, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, to emerge from the waters and found the Inca civilization. For the Inca, Lake Titicaca wasn't just a body of water. It was the cradle of their culture, a place where the divine touched the earthly. The Yoros people, who still live on Lake Titicaca today, build their homes on floating islands made of reeds, a practice that dates back centuries. These islands aren't just practical solutions to living on water. They're a testament to the lake's enduring sacredness. The Yoros believe the lake is guarded by Apu, or mountain spirits, who protect its waters and ensure their survival. So, why did lakes symbolize both life and death? For the Maya, cenotes were places of transformation, where offerings could appease the gods and ensure the cycle of rain and fertility. For the Inca, Lake Titicaca was a source of creation, a reminder that life itself emerged from water. Both cultures saw lakes as liminal spaces, places where the boundaries between life and death, creation and destruction, blurred. This duality isn't unique to the Americas. In Europe, enchanted wells and sacred springs have long been sites of pilgrimage and ritual. From the healing waters of Lourdes to the mystical springs of Avalon, water has always been a bridge between the earthly and the divine. But what is it about these bodies of water that makes them so universally sacred? Perhaps it's their ability to reflect the sky, to hold the heavens in their depths, or their power to both sustain and destroy life. As we move from the jungles of the Yucatan to the highlands of the Andes, and eventually to the enchanted wells of Europe, one thing becomes clear: water isn't just a physical necessity, it's a spiritual one. It connects us to the divine, to the natural world, and to each other, weaving a tapestry of myth, ritual, and survival that spans continents and centuries. And as we'll see next, this connection isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living tradition, one that continues to shape our relationship with water today. In the misty highlands of ancient Greece, nestled among the whispering oaks of Dodona, lay a sacred spring where the god Zeus was said to speak. The Oracle of Dodona, one of the oldest in Greece, listened intently to the rustling leaves and the ripples of the spring, interpreting them as divine messages. This wasn't just any water, it was a conduit for the voice of the king of the gods. The spring's murmurs were believed to carry prophecies, offering guidance to those who sought wisdom from the heavens. Here, water wasn't just a physical element, it was a medium for the sacred, a bridge between mortals and the divine. Across Europe, water held a similar mystique. The Celts, for instance, saw rivers as living entities, often personifying them as gods or spirits. The Thames and the Rhine were no exceptions. The Rhine, known as Renus Pater, Father Rhine, was worshipped as a powerful deity, his waters both a source of life and a force to be reckoned with. Along these rivers, the Celts would deposit votive offerings, swords, jewelry, and even human sacrifices into the depths, believing these gifts would appease the spirits and ensure their favor. These offerings weren't just acts of devotion, they were negotiations with the unseen forces that governed their world. In Roman Britain, the city of Bath became a center of water worship, thanks to its natural hot springs. The Romans called it Aquae Sulis, dedicating the site to Sulis Minerva, a fusion of the local Celtic goddess Sulis and the Roman Minerva. Pilgrims flocked to the springs, seeking healing and divine favor. The waters were believed to cure ailments, and the temple complex became a place where the physical and spiritual intertwined. Even today, the ruins of Bath's Roman baths stand as a testament to the enduring power of water as a sacred force. The Norse, too, had their own sacred waters. At the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, lay the Well of Erd, a mystical spring where the Norns, the weavers of fate, dwelt. The waters of Erd were said to hold the destinies of gods and mortals alike, a reminder that water wasn't just a source of life but a keeper of cosmic order. To drink from the Well of Erd was to glimpse the threads of fate, a privilege reserved for the gods. But perhaps one of the most haunting tales of Europe's enchanted waters comes from Ovid's Metamorphoses. In the story of Narcissus, a young man becomes entranced by his own reflection in a pool, unable to tear himself away. The pool, described as a haunted mirror, becomes both his salvation and his doom. This myth captures the duality of water, its ability to reflect beauty and truth, but also to ensnare and destroy. Fast forward to the 19th century, and the sacredness of water takes on a new form. In Lourdes, France, a young girl named Bernadette Soubirous claimed to see visions of the Virgin Mary near a spring. The waters of Lourdes soon became famous for their supposed healing properties, drawing millions of pilgrims each year. This revival of well worship, now framed within a Christian context, raises an intriguing question. Did Christianity absorb and repurpose earlier pagan water cults? The rituals may have changed, but the underlying reverence for water as a sacred, life-giving force remained. From the whispers of Zeus at Dodona to the healing springs of Lourdes, water has always been more than just a resource. It's a symbol of the divine, a medium for prophecy, and a bridge between the human and the eternal. These rituals, whether pagan or Christian, remind us that water isn't just something we drink, it's something we worship, something that connects us to the mysteries of existence. And as we'll see next, this connection isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living tradition, one that continues to shape our relationship with water today. The waters of Lake Texcoco shimmered under the harsh sun of the Aztec Empire, but beneath their surface lay a darker truth. For the Aztecs, this lake was more than a body of water. It was the domain of Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. To appease him, the Aztecs performed rituals that might seem unthinkable today. Children, often adorned with jade beads and dressed in ceremonial garb, were led to the lake's edge. Their tears were seen as omens of rain, a sign that Tlaloc was pleased. These sacrifices weren't acts of cruelty, but desperate attempts to ensure the survival of an entire civilization. The Aztecs believed that without Tlaloc's favor, the rains would fail, crops would wither, and famine would follow. In their eyes, the lives of a few were a small price to pay for the survival of many. Contrast this with the Hindu practice of floating diyas or oil lamps on the Ganges during the festival of Diwali. These lamps, often made of clay and filled with ghee, are set adrift as offerings to ancestors, their flickering flames symbolizing the light of wisdom and the eternal cycle of life and death. Unlike the Aztec sacrifices, this ritual is peaceful, a celebration of memory and continuity. Yet both practices share a common thread. the belief that water is a sacred medium, a bridge between the living and the divine. Bernal Diaz, a Spanish conquistador, witnessed firsthand the Aztecs' reverence for Lake Texcoco. In his accounts, he describes how Moctezuma, the Aztec emperor, would throw gold and precious jewels into the lake as offerings to the gods. These treasures weren't just symbols of wealth, they were acts of devotion, attempts to maintain cosmic balance. The Aztecs believed that the gods required constant nourishment, and failure to provide it could upset the delicate equilibrium of the universe. This idea of sacrifice as a means of maintaining cosmic balance wasn't unique to the Aztecs. In Viking culture, rivers were often the final resting places for great leaders. Ship burials where the deceased were laid to rest in vessels laden with treasures and set adrift or buried along riverbanks were common. These rituals weren't just about honoring the dead. They were about ensuring their safe passage to the afterlife and maintaining harmony between the worlds of the living and the dead. In ancient China, the Yellow River was similarly revered. Jade by discs, symbols of heaven and eternity, were often thrown into its waters as offerings. These discs, with their circular shape and central hole, represented the connection between the earthly and the divine. The Yellow River, known as the Mother River, was both a giver of life and a taker of it, its floods both nourishing and devastating. By offering jade, the ancient Chinese sought to appease the river's unpredictable spirit and ensure its favor. Even in the Andes, the sacredness of water was tied to sacrifice. In 2015, archaeologists discovered the remains of pre-Incan child mummies near Lake Titicaca. These children, believed to have been offered to the gods, were found with elaborate grave goods, suggesting they were seen as messengers to the divine. Like the Aztecs, the people of the Andes believed that such sacrifices were necessary to maintain cosmic order and ensure the fertility of the land. So, was violence an inherent part of maintaining cosmic balance? For many ancient cultures, the answer was yes. Sacrifice, whether of gold, jade, or even human lives, was seen as a necessary exchange for the gods' favor. But these acts weren't just about appeasement, they were about connection. By offering something of value, whether a lamp, a treasure, or a life, these cultures sought to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine, to ensure the continued flow of life-giving water. And as we'll see next, this deep reverence for water didn't just inspire rituals, it also sparked incredible feats of engineering, as ancient cultures sought to harness and honor the sacred power of rivers and lakes. From the aqueducts of Rome to the stepwells of India, faith and ingenuity intertwined to create structures that were as much about worship as they were about survival. The Romans were masters of engineering, but their aqueducts were more than just feats of ingenuity. They were acts of devotion. Take the Pont du Gard, a towering aqueduct in southern France. While its arches and precision are marvels of engineering, it was also dedicated to the water nymphs, the nymphae, who were believed to inhabit the springs that fed it. For the Romans, water wasn't just a resource, it was a sacred gift, and their aqueducts were as much about honoring the divine as they were about supplying cities. Frontinus, Rome's water commissioner, famously called the aqueducts the city's greatest achievement, not just for their scale but for their role in sustaining life and connecting the people to the gods. Halfway across the world, in the arid landscapes of Rajasthan, stepwells like Chand Bayori tell a different story of sacred hydrology. These intricate structures, carved deep into the earth, were adorned with statues of Devi, the goddess of water, and served as both reservoirs and places of worship. Descending into a stepwell wasn't just about fetching water, it was a spiritual journey, a descent into the womb of the earth where the divine and the practical intertwined. The steps, often numbering in the hundreds, were designed not just for access but for meditation, their symmetry reflecting the cosmic order. In Southeast Asia, the Inca Empire took this idea even further. Their vast moats surrounding temples like Angkor Wat weren't just defensive structures, they were mirrors of the cosmic ocean from which the universe emerged in Hindu cosmology. These moats symbolized the boundary between the earthly and the divine, their waters reflecting the heavens and connecting the temple to the cosmos. The Angkorians didn't just build for survival, they built to align their world with the sacred. Meanwhile, in Persia, the Cenote system, a network of underground tunnels that brought water from mountains to deserts, was blessed by Zoroastrian priests. These tunnels, some stretching for miles, were seen as gifts from Ahura Mazda, the god of light and wisdom. The Cenotes weren't just engineering marvels, they were acts of faith, ensuring that even in the harshest environments, life could flourish. And then there's the Bali Subak system, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that has sustained rice terraces for over 1,000 years. This intricate network of canals and water temples is managed by local farmers who see their work as a form of worship. The Subak system isn't just about irrigation, it's about balance between humans, nature, and the divine. Each water temple is dedicated to Dewi Sri, the goddess of rice, and the entire system operates on the principle of Tri-Hita Karana, or harmony with the gods, nature, and fellow humans. So did piety drive innovation? In many ways, yes, across cultures, the sacredness of water inspired not just rituals but incredible feats of engineering. These structures weren't just practical solutions, they were expressions of faith, attempts to harness and honor the divine power of water. But water's sacredness didn't just inspire engineering, it also found its way into art. From the mosaics of Roman baths to the carvings of Hindu stepwells, water's symbolic duality as both life-giver and destroyer has been a recurring theme. In the next section, we'll explore how artists across the ages have captured this duality, turning water into a canvas for the sacred and the sublime. In the ancient world, water wasn't just a physical force, it was a canvas for the sacred, a symbol that artists and thinkers used to explore the mysteries of existence. Take the Mesopotamian cylinder seals, for example. These small, intricately carved stones often featured a zigzag line known as the Apsu symbol, representing both water and wisdom. To the Mesopotamians, water wasn't just a source of life, it was the primordial chaos from which order emerged. The Apsu, the underground freshwater ocean, was the domain of Enki, the god of wisdom and creation. In these seals, the zigzag line wasn't just a decorative motif, it was a reminder that water held the secrets of the universe, a force that could both destroy and create. Halfway across the world, in ancient China, water took on a different but equally profound meaning. Taoist ink paintings often depicted rivers as flowing brushstrokes, their curves and swirls capturing the essence of life's impermanence. These rivers weren't just landscapes, they were metaphors for the Tao, the eternal flow of existence. The artist's brush, guided by the philosophy of Wu Wei effortless action, mirrored the river's natural course, a reminder that harmony comes from aligning with the rhythms of the universe. In the Minoan frescoes of ancient Crete, water appears in a more playful yet deeply symbolic form. Dolphins leaping through the waves were seen as protectors and guides, their presence a sign of Poseidon's favor. These vibrant murals found in the palaces of Knossos weren't just decorative, they were expressions of a culture deeply connected to the sea. For the Minoans, the ocean wasn't just a source of food and trade, it was a living entity, a realm of gods and spirits. Meanwhile, in the Andes, water's sacredness was captured in the intricate designs of pre-Columbian pottery. Rain serpents, coiled and sinuous, were a recurring motif, symbolizing the life-giving power of water. These serpents weren't just decorative, they were prayers for rain carved into clay as offerings to the gods. The Andean people understood that water was both a blessing and a curse. Too little and the crops would fail, too much and the floods would destroy. Their art reflected this duality, a reminder of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. One of the most striking examples of water's symbolic power comes from the Vatican's Nile mosaic, a Roman masterpiece that depicts the river as a divine network of tributaries. Each branch of the Nile is personified as a god or goddess, their figures intertwined with the river's flow. This mosaic wasn't just a map, it was a celebration of water's sacred role in sustaining life. The Nile, with its annual floods, was the lifeblood of Egypt, and the Romans, ever the admirers of grandeur, saw it as a symbol of divine order. So, why did water symbolize both creation and destruction? Perhaps because it embodies the very essence of life, its unpredictability, its power, its ability to both nourish and devastate. For ancient cultures, water wasn't just a resource, it was a mirror of the cosmos, a force that connected the earthly and the divine. But as we'll see next, this sacred connection to water didn't remain untouched. With the rise of colonialism, the spiritual significance of rivers and lakes began to shift, as new ideologies and power structures reshaped humanity's relationship with the natural world. The sacred waters of the past became battlegrounds for control, their spiritual meanings overshadowed by the demands of empire. And yet, even in the face of such change, the ancient reverence for water endures, a testament to its enduring power as a symbol of life, creation, and the divine. The Ganges, once a free-flowing goddess, now bears the weight of modernity. In the 19th century, British engineers arrived with their blueprints and bulldozers, determined to tame her waters. Dams and barrages were erected not to honor her sanctity, but to harness her power for irrigation and industry. To the colonial mind, the Ganges was no longer Ganga marsh, she was a resource, a commodity to be controlled. Victorian anthropologists dismissed the rituals of her devotees as mere superstition, failing to see the profound connection between the river and the people who worshipped her. The sacred was reduced to the primitive, and the spiritual was stripped away in the name of progress. This wasn't an isolated act. Halfway across the world, the Aral Sea, once revered by Central Asian shamans as a source of life and healing, was drained to irrigate cotton fields. By the late 20th century, what was once the fourth largest lake in the world had shrunk to a fraction of its size, leaving behind a barren wasteland. The shaman's chants, once carried across its waters, now echo in the silence of a dying ecosystem. The Aral Sea's fate is a stark reminder of what happens when water is seen only as a resource stripped of its sacredness. Vandana Shiva, the renowned environmental activist, has called this shift the commodification of water. In her words, when water becomes a commodity, it loses its soul. This commodification didn't just happen in India or Central Asia, it was a global phenomenon. In Europe, the 19th century saw the draining of holy marshes and the rerouting of sacred springs, all in the name of agricultural expansion. These wetlands, once seen as liminal spaces where the divine touched the earthly, were reduced to mere plots of land, their spiritual significance erased. Even in Australia, the Murray River, a lifeline for Aboriginal communities, was dammed and diverted, disrupting ancient songlines, spiritual pathways that connected the land, the people, and the water. For the Ungarangari people, the river wasn't just a source of sustenance, it was a living entity, a part of their identity. The dams didn't just alter the flow of water, they severed a connection that had existed for tens of thousands of years. So, can we reclaim the ancestral respect for water? The answer lies in the growing eco-spiritual movements of today. From the indigenous-led efforts to restore the Murray River to the global push for recognizing rivers as legal entities with rights, there's a growing recognition that water is more than a resource, it's a sacred force. In New Zealand, the Wanganui River was granted legal personhood in 2017, a landmark decision that acknowledges its spiritual and cultural significance to the Maori people. These movements aren't just about conservation, they're about reconnecting with the ancient wisdom that saw water as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. They remind us that the sacredness of water isn't a relic of the past, it's a living tradition, one that can guide us toward a more sustainable and respectful relationship with the natural world. As we move forward, the question isn't just how to manage water, but how to honor it. Can we learn from the past, not as a distant memory, but as a guide for the future? The answer, perhaps, lies in the ripples of a river, the whispers of a spring, and the timeless truth that water is life, and life in all its forms is sacred. In the heart of India, a movement is unfolding that blends ancient reverence with modern science. Hindu monks clad in saffron robes now stand shoulder to shoulder with environmental scientists, launching the Clean Mother campaign to restore the Ganges. For centuries, the river has been worshipped as Ganga Ma, a living goddess whose waters cleanse the soul. But today, she is choked with pollution, her sacred flow disrupted by industrial waste and untreated sewage. The Clean Mother campaign isn't just an environmental initiative, it's an act of devotion, a modern pilgrimage to heal the divine. Monks chant ancient hymns as they plant trees along her banks, while scientists deploy cutting-edge technology to filter her waters. Together, they are redefining what it means to worship, proving that faith and science can unite to protect what is sacred. Halfway across the globe, a similar shift is taking place. In 2017, New Zealand's Wanganui River became the first in the world to be granted legal personhood, a groundbreaking decision rooted in Maori tradition. To the Maori, the river is not a resource but an ancestor, a living entity with its own rights and dignity. This legal recognition echoes ancient beliefs, transforming environmental stewardship into a form of modern reverence. The river now has its own legal guardians tasked with speaking on its behalf, ensuring its health and well-being. It's a powerful reminder that the sacredness of water isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living, breathing truth. Even the Vatican has joined this global conversation. In his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si', Pope Francis called for a renewed sense of responsibility toward the earth, framing environmental stewardship as a moral and spiritual duty. He described water as a precious gift that must be protected, linking its care to the core tenets of faith. This message resonates deeply in places like Bolivia, where the law of Mother Earth, inspired by Andean cosmovision, recognizes nature as a living being with inherent rights. Here, the sacredness of water isn't just a belief, it's a legal and ethical imperative. Meanwhile, in the misty hills of Ireland, an ancient tradition is being revived. Celtic well blessings, once a common practice to honor the spirits of sacred springs, are making a comeback. These rituals, which involve offerings of flowers, prayers, and songs, are not just about nostalgia, they're about reconnecting with the land and its waters. For the Celts, wells were portals to the otherworld, places where the divine could be felt and heard. Today, these blessings serve as a reminder that water is more than a resource. It's a bridge between the earthly and the eternal. So, is saving rivers the new worship? In many ways, yes. Across cultures and continents, people are rediscovering the sacredness of water, not through ancient rituals alone, but through modern acts of care and conservation. Whether it's the monks of the Ganges, the guardians of the Wanganui, or the well-blessers of Ireland, these efforts are more than environmental, they're spiritual. They remind us that water is not just something we use, it's something we honor, something that connects us to the mysteries of existence. And yet, beneath the surface of these sacred waters, mysteries still linger. What secrets lie hidden in the depths of the Ganges, the Wanganui, or the cenotes of the Maya? What stories do these waters hold, waiting to be uncovered? As we dive deeper into the next chapter, we'll explore the enigmatic world beneath the waves, where the sacred and the unknown intertwine. beneath the serene surface of Guatemala's Lake Atitlan lies a mystery that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. In 2021, sonar scans revealed a trove of Mayan artifacts resting on the lakebed: ceremonial vessels, stone carvings, and even remnants of ancient structures. These discoveries hint at a submerged world, a place where the Maya once performed rituals to honor their gods. But what else lies hidden in these depths? The lake, surrounded by volcanoes and steeped in myth, has long been considered sacred by the local Tigris people, who believe it is the navel of the world. Could these artifacts be offerings to the gods or remnants of a lost city swallowed by time? The answers remain elusive, buried beneath layers of water and history. Meanwhile, in the icy lakes of Scandinavia, another enigma awaits. Viking sagas speak of treasures thrown into the water as offerings to the gods: swords, jewelry, and even entire ships. While some of these offerings have been recovered, many remain undiscovered, their locations lost to time. Lakes like Tiso in Denmark and Mälaren in Sweden are believed to hold untold riches, yet their depths remain largely unexplored. What stories do these submerged treasures tell? Were they gifts to Odin, Thor, or the elusive water spirits known as Nekkan? The Vikings saw water as a liminal space, a boundary between worlds, and their offerings may have been attempts to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. Even the Nile, one of the most studied rivers in history, holds secrets that defy explanation. Medieval maps, like the famous Tabula Rogeriana, depict the Nile's source as a series of lakes and mountains, but the exact location remained a mystery for centuries. Explorers like John Hanning Speke and Richard Burton spent years searching for its origins, yet even today, the river's true source is debated. Could there be undiscovered tributaries or ancient sites hidden along its course? The Nile has always been more than a river. It's a symbol of life, mystery, and the unknown. Off the coast of Okinawa, Japan, another watery legend persists. The Ryugu-jo, or Dragon Palace, is said to lie beneath the waves, a mythical realm ruled by the dragon god Ryujin. According to folklore, the palace is a place of unimaginable beauty, filled with treasures and guarded by sea creatures. While no physical evidence of the Dragon Palace has been found, the legend endures, a testament to humanity's fascination with the mysteries of the deep. Could this myth be rooted in a real underwater site waiting to be discovered? As Graham Hancock once said, water hides more history than land. From the sunken cities of the Maya to the Viking treasures of Scandinavia, the world's sacred waters are a treasure trove of untold stories. What secrets await in their depths? What forgotten rituals, lost civilizations, or ancient offerings lie hidden beneath the waves? These questions remind us that water is more than a resource. It's a keeper of mysteries, a bridge between the past and the present. And as we reflect on these enigmas, one thing becomes clear: the sacredness of water isn't just about what we know, it's about what we have yet to discover. In the ripples of a lake, the currents of a river, or the depths of an ocean, the past whispers to us, inviting us to dive deeper, to explore, and to wonder. The world's sacred waters are not just sources of life, they are portals to the unknown, holding stories that have yet to be told. As the first light of dawn breaks over the Ganges, the river glows like molten gold, her surface alive with the flicker of oil lamps and the murmur of prayers. Pilgrims wade into her waters, their hands cupping the sacred flow, their chants rising like incense into the morning air. This timeless scene, repeated for millennia, is more than a ritual, it's a testament to humanity's enduring quest for meaning. From the banks of the Ganges to the depths of Lake Titicaca, rivers and lakes have always been more than sources of water. They are mirrors of the divine, bridges between the mortal and the eternal, and keepers of the stories that define us. Across cultures and continents, these sacred waters have shaped civilizations, inspired myths, and fueled the human imagination. The Nile's floods brought life to Egypt, while the cenotes of the Maya connected the living to the underworld. The Vikings saw rivers as pathways to the gods, and the Inca revered lakes as the birthplace of the sun. These bodies of water weren't just geographical features. They were the lifeblood of belief, the threads that wove together the fabric of human spirituality. But water's sacredness isn't just a relic of the past. In a world grappling with climate change and environmental degradation, the ancient reverence for rivers and lakes offers a powerful lesson. The Maori of New Zealand remind us that the river is not our ancestor, we are the river. This profound truth speaks to the interconnectedness of all life, urging us to see water not as a resource to exploit, but as a living entity to protect. From the Wanganui River's legal personhood to the global efforts to clean the Ganges, modern movements are reclaiming this ancient wisdom, blending spirituality with science to safeguard our planet's most precious gift. As we stand at the crossroads of history and ecology, the question isn't just how to survive, but how to thrive. Can we learn from the past, not as a distant memory, but as a guide for the future? The answer lies in the ripples of a river, the whispers of a spring, and the timeless truth that water is life, and life in all its forms is sacred. So, what's your story? What legends or traditions surround the waters near you? Share them in the comments below. We'd love to hear how your local rivers, lakes, or springs connect to the sacred. And if you've enjoyed this journey into the heart of history's mysteries, don't forget to subscribe for more explorations of the past, present, and future. Together, let's dive deeper into the stories that shape our world. Sound of rippling water fades to silence.